You're standing in a meeting, and you suddenly realize you've mispronounced a word. Heat floods your face. Your mind races. Every single person in that room heard it. Every single person is still thinking about it. Every single person is silently judging you. But the real answer is far stranger. None of them noticed. And the one person who might have noticed has already forgotten, because they're busy worrying about their own mispronounced word from 10 minutes ago, which you never caught either. This isn't a comforting lie. It's one of the most replicated findings in social psychology, and it has a name: the spotlight effect. The feeling that a bright, unforgiving beam follows you everywhere, illuminating every stumble and every flaw. That beam exists only inside your own head. Everyone else is living under their own spotlight, and they have almost no bandwidth left to watch you under yours. The term was coined in 1999 and formally published in the year 2000 by psychologists Thomas Gilovich, Victoria Medvec, and Kenneth Savitsky. But the experiment that proved it was almost absurdly simple. They gathered a group of college students and gave each one a T-shirt to wear into a room full of peers. What the students didn't know was that the T-shirt featured a large, brightly colored image of Barry Manilow, the kind of image that, at the time, a college student would find deeply embarrassing. Each participant walked into a room where a handful of other students were already seated, faced them for a moment, and then walked out. Afterward, the researchers asked the T-shirt wearers, "What percentage of the people in that room do you think noticed what was on your shirt?" The participants guessed around 50%, half the room. Surely half the room would remember something that humiliating. Then the researchers asked the people in the room. The actual number who could recall the image on the shirt? Around 25%. Half of what the wearer believed. Your brain overestimates how visible you are by a factor of 2. That is not a small error. That is a systematic distortion built into the architecture of your social perception. Why does your brain do this? Gilovich and his colleagues proposed that the spotlight effect runs on a cognitive shortcut called anchoring and adjustment, a mechanism first identified by Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky. Here's how it works in plain terms. You know exactly what you look like. You know exactly how your voice sounded when that word came out wrong. You know exactly where the coffee stain is on your sleeve. That information is blazingly vivid inside your own experience. It is the anchor. And when you try to estimate what other people see, you start from that anchor, from your own rich, detailed, painfully self-aware internal reality, and then you adjust downward. But you don't adjust nearly enough. You assume others see you almost as clearly as you see yourself. They don't. They can't. They have their own anchors to manage. This is not a failure of character. It is not even a failure of cognition. It is a side effect of consciousness. Your brain cannot escape its own perspective. You are the protagonist of your own lived experience, and that feels so real, so total, that you unconsciously project it onto everyone else's field of view. You assume they're watching your movie. They're not. They're watching theirs. The implications go deeper than an awkward T-shirt. Kenneth Savitsky and Thomas Gilovich followed up in 2003 with a study on what they called the illusion of transparency. This time, they asked participants to give a short speech in front of an audience. Before speaking, each participant rated how nervous they thought they would appear. After speaking, the audience rated how nervous the speaker actually looked. The gap was enormous. Speakers believed their trembling hands, their racing heart, their internal panic were on full display. The audience saw very little of it. The internal storm stayed internal. And here is the crucial discovery. When the researchers told a separate group of speakers about the illusion of transparency before they stepped up to the podium, when they explained that their anxiety would be far less visible than they feared, those speakers not only felt calmer, they performed better. Their speeches were rated as more confident and more compelling by independent judges. Simply knowing about the bias reduced the bias. What does this mean for you? It means that the voice telling you to stay quiet in a meeting because everyone will notice your nerves, that voice is lying. It means the hesitation before you send a message, the deleted text, the rewritten email, the moment you chose not to raise your hand, all of it was built on a miscalculation. The cost you paid was real. The audience you were paying it for was imaginary. But here is where the story takes a strange turn. There is a counterintuitive consequence to the spotlight effect that almost nobody talks about. The very act of trying to shrink yourself, of trying to escape the spotlight, can actually draw more attention than the thing you were worried about in the first place. Consider the person at a party who stands against the wall, arms crossed, barely speaking. That person believes they are protecting themselves. In reality, they are now the most visually distinct figure in the room, because everyone else is moving and talking and blending into the social flow. The spotlight you imagine punishes visibility. The social world you actually live in punishes withdrawal. Your attempt to hide makes you the anomaly. The thing you feared, being seen, becomes more likely precisely because you tried to avoid it. This paradox plays out in every corner of modern life. On dating apps, people curate fewer photos, write shorter bios, reveal less, hoping to reduce the risk of judgment. But minimal profiles get fewer matches and more suspicion. At work, people volunteer less information in meetings, believing silence protects them from scrutiny. But silence in a collaborative environment is itself a statement, and it is often interpreted as disengagement or uncertainty, neither of which is invisible. The spotlight effect tells you to retreat. The actual architecture of social perception rewards those who step forward. Now consider the world you are living in right now. The pandemic years pulled millions of people out of daily face-to-face interaction. Conversations moved to screens. Body language disappeared. And for a long stretch of time, you could control exactly how you appeared. The angle of the camera, the lighting, the mute button. Then the world reopened. And something strange happened. People re-entered physical spaces carrying a heightened awareness of being seen, because being seen had become unfamiliar. Social muscles that used to operate automatically now felt stiff and deliberate. The spotlight effect, already powerful under normal conditions, got supercharged by 2 years of attenuated social exposure. You weren't just worrying about a mispronounced word anymore. You were worrying about how to stand, where to put your hands, whether your expression looked right, whether you were laughing at the right moments. The spotlight didn't just feel brighter, it felt like it had been upgraded to stadium lighting. But here is what the research keeps showing, again and again, across decades and cultures and circumstances. Nobody is watching you as closely as you think they are. Nobody. Not your colleagues, not strangers at a cafe, not the person you just matched with. Not even your friends, who are genuinely interested in you, but are also genuinely distracted by their own interior lives. You are background noise in most people's perception, a brief flicker, a passing impression. And that is not an insult, that is freedom. Think about the last time you noticed someone else's mistake. Maybe they stumbled over a word, maybe their shirt was wrinkled, maybe they said something slightly awkward. How long did you think about it? 5 seconds? 10? And then your attention moved on, to your phone, to your next thought, to your own reflection in a window. That is exactly how long other people think about your mistakes. The difference is that you replay yours for hours, days, years. You are the only person running a highlight reel of your worst moments. Everyone else stopped watching. So, here is the practical reframe. The next time you feel the heat of self-consciousness rising, the next time you are sure that everyone in the room has noticed something about you, stop and run a simple mental calculation. Whatever percentage of people you believe are paying attention, cut it in half. Then cut it in half again. That number is probably still too high, but it is closer to the truth. Your brain multiplies visibility. The correction is division. Divide by 2. Then divide by 2 again. Now act from that number. This is not feel-good advice dressed up as science. This is one of the most robust, most replicated effects in all of social cognition. Gilovich and his colleagues didn't just run one T-shirt study. They ran 5 variations, with different settings, different audiences, and different measures, and the overestimation held every single time. Savitsky and Gilovich didn't just measure the illusion of transparency. They demonstrated that informing people about it measurably reduced their anxiety and improved their performance. This is not a metaphor. This is a lever you can pull. And if you pull it consistently, something shifts. You start saying the thing you would have swallowed. You take the risk you would have avoided. You walk into the room without scanning for exits, not because you've become fearless, because you finally understood that most of your fear was directed at an audience that never existed. The spotlight was always a flashlight you were holding yourself, aimed backward, shining directly into your own eyes. You're standing in a meeting, and you suddenly realize you've mispronounced a word. Heat floods your face. Your mind races. But now you know something you didn't know before. Nobody is watching you as closely as you think they are. And the one person in the room who is still thinking about that mispronounced word, the only one, is you.